Hey everyone, you're listening to Code Switch from NPR. I'm B.A. Parker. And happy Juneteenth! Of course, today marks the day that the last enslaved Black people were declared free in this country. A reality that, for a lot of others, was, to say the least, difficult to come to terms with. And in the century and a half since, there have been plenty of efforts to curb Black people's freedom and squash our joy. And we live in a different world today, and Black and brown, and frankly everyone's joy, is something that I personally think we all need a lot more of these days. Just a little example, I for one am gonna be at a cookout today, dancing to soul music decades older than me, and relishing in what Ossie Davis would call the full sweetness of my Blackness. Maybe in some ways, experiencing that joy is my tiny act of resistance to these overwhelming times. Except, of course, this wouldn't be a Code Switch episode if we didn't dig a little deeper into what that really means. And I'm reminded of a conversation I had with our senior editor, Leah Donnella, last summer about that phrase, joy is resistance, that she kept seeing repeated on social media over and over. So if I understand things correctly, you're coming to the mic today to talk about joy.
Yes, joy.
Okay. Deep breaths, everyone.
Parker, it's joy. Why do you sound nervous?
Because I know you, and no offense, but you have a way sometimes of making fun things not that fun. So, frankly, I guess I'm just concerned that you're about to ruin the concept of joy for me.
God, you know me too well.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I don't think I'm going to ruin anyone's idea of joy. I'm just hoping to, complicate it a little.
Leah, that's what I'm afraid of. But, okay, all right, deep breath. So where are we starting?
All right, so Parker, I don't know if you've had this experience, but I noticed more and more of the people I follow on social media using the phrase, joy is resistance.
That's because joy is resistance. Or joy is an act of resistance, is the other version I've seen. Shout out to the poet Toy Derricott.
Yep. And it's a phrase I'd heard before, but never this regularly and never to describe such a, normal array of experiences. On Instagram, for example, I was seeing people post pictures of things like eating dinner with their friends or looking at flowers or getting a new manicure. And they would caption the photos, #joyisresistance.
I mean, it's not just your circles, Leah. Joy is resistance has actually become a pretty popular slogan. I've been seeing it everywhere. It's on t-shirts, it's on mugs, it's all over TikTok. AOC is talking about it. Here she is on Latino USA.
You're allowed to be happy. You are allowed to cultivate joy. In fact, you need to.
Right. And sorry to be a hater.
You're not sorry.
I'm not that sorry. Because my immediate reaction to a lot of this was a deep, visceral skepticism. My thought was, a lot of groups in the U.S. right now are very afraid that their rights, livelihoods, access to healthcare, access to social welfare benefits, ability to stay in the country, all of that is at risk of being taken away or is actively being taken away. A lot of people have expressed concern that we're in the midst of a constitutional crisis, that we are watching the rise of an authoritarian regime before our very eyes. So, I'm super happy for you if you have a bunch of friends and look great with them, but it doesn't exactly make you a freedom fighter. Again, that was my thought.
Okay, that's fair. I get it. But first of all, it sounds like you need to get out and make some friends.
Whatever, Parker.
But secondly, Leah, look into my eyes. Hear me when I say this. Are you looking?
I'm looking at the sound of your voice.
Exactly. You personally are allowed to be happy, Leah.
I'm not actually arguing that we shouldn't all get to experience joy. That's a conversation I saved for my therapist. Shout out to Eitan.
Right on.
I'm really just wondering, when is joy actually acting as a form of resistance? And when is joy, or the illusion of joy, serving some other purpose?
To paraphrase the great Baltimore Club hit by Rod Lee, I do think we might be able to dance our pain away.
Dance my pain away. I got problems. Dance my pain away. I got problems. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
So, Leah, you went on a mission to understand whether joy can be an effective tool for resistance. Where did you start looking into that question?
Well, one of the people who came to mind right off the bat was someone named Adrienne Marie Brown. She's a writer and activist, and I first became aware of her as the author of a book called Pleasure Activism.
Okay, I remember when the book came out back in 2019. I think a lot of people were very ready to seize on this idea that activism could be like, quote unquote, sexy.
Uh-huh.
But anyway, Leah, what is pleasure activism about?
Well, Adrienne told me it was really inspired by an idea that Audre Lorde wrote about, which was, as Adrienne put it,
being able to actually feel the pleasures of being alive in a day and having agency over what we're doing is actually a path of our liberation and a sign of our liberation.
That idea comes from Lorde's landmark essay, Uses of the Erotic. In it, she talks about how joy can be transformative in community.
The sharing of joy, whether physical, emotional, psychic, or intellectual, forms a bridge between the sharers.
And Lorde also talks about what it can mean for an individual.
For once we begin to feel deeply all the aspects of our lives, we begin to demand from ourselves and from all our lives' pursuits that they feel in accordance with that joy which we know ourselves to be capable of.
So in her book, Pleasure Activism, Adrienne Marie Brown builds on this argument that experiencing pleasure and joy in its many forms is not a frivolous thing.
Being able to feel pleasure is connected to being able to feel everything else about our aliveness. And I particularly wanted to aim the book at people who come from oppressed and marginalized communities, because one of the things I've come to understand is that that is one of the ways we are most easily controlled, is when pleasure is taken off the table or made to feel like it's not even a part of something that belongs to our lives. And so the reclaiming of pleasure in the here and now is an important part of reclaiming the wholeness of our lives.
That makes me think about the fear that so many immigrant communities are facing right now, worried that they'll get caught up in ICE raids. I've been reading about how much people are constraining their lives.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that a lot too. Like being in LA where there's such a huge immigrant population, you can feel that so acutely here. Like the streets have been quieter in places. Lots of people aren't showing up to doctor's appointments or to school or church.
Our colleague Jasmine Gars just reported a piece about how a lot of immigrants in Florida aren't playing music in Spanish in their cars because they're afraid it will put a target on their backs.
When I think about people like that who are afraid and feel like they're constantly being monitored and surveilled, I can definitely understand how claiming joy and expressing it would be a way to try and push back against the forces that are creating that atmosphere of fear and isolation.
But that still leaves the question of, like, for whom is joy resistance?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're not part of a group that's being terrorized, is your joy still doing that work?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to ask Adrienne if she thought that the idea was perhaps being overstretched, like to include some things that are not that revolutionary. So I told her what I told you earlier about what I'd been noticing on social media. You know, the people having fun, doing beautiful things in beautiful places, captioning it, joy is resistance. And she immediately clocked the suspicion in my voice.
How did that feel to you?
I'm kind of like a curmudgeon, so when
great.
I saw that, I think my initial reaction was like, is it? Like, I don't know. I don't think there's anything wrong with, like, enjoying yourself, but it was ringing, like, a little bit false to me that this was a form of resistance, especially in the context of everything hard and kind of overwhelming that's happening in the country right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess it was like skepticism, maybe some jealousy. a combination of things. And I was curious if you've been seeing that and what your reaction has been too.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely seen some of it. And I'll say I'm finding myself less and less online in general right now. But when I do go on, I do see some of that. And it strikes me a number of ways. One is I deeply understand it. You know, like in a society that's trying to erase you, to not only say I exist, but I exist and I'm having a great life. It does feel like there's a resistance there. Like you're saying trans people don't exist, and here they are dancing in the streets. You're saying queer people don't exist, and here we are having incredible natural retreats or whatever it is, right? And it's like, not only do we exist, have we existed before, and we will exist after. There is something about that resistance that is fundamentally joyful. But I also can feel that curmudgeonly energy come in sometimes where I'm like, it can't be the whole resistance, right? And so I think for folks, you know, it's like if they're not doing anything else but having the best bath ever over and over again, there might need to be some consideration of like, well, what else can I pick up? Because one of the sort of tricky knotted places that we're in, particularly inside of capitalism is designed to keep enough people comfortable enough not to push back against that system. And so there's a way that the mere fact that you can be like, oh, I'm going on this exquisite vacation, or I am having this really expensive dinner or something else, is a sign that capitalism is working for you. And that's not necessarily resistance, right? That in some ways is a way of saying I'm fully participating in this economic model, even though I don't agree with it.
So Leah, did Adrienne talk about what joy as resistance might actually look like in practice? Because I think a lot of people might agree with what she's saying, but there's still like a really nice vacation or dinner is what brings me joy.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, a nice dinner can be great. But one of the things we got into was the difference between making the revolution irresistible, to paraphrase that famous Tony Cade Bambara line, and making the revolution look irresistible.
The revolution will not be televised or live streamed or TikToked.
Exactly.
I think one of the things we have to be careful of is painting a picture for people that's not rooted in a reality that they can come be a part of, unless we let people know, like, come co-create something. And that invitation has to be a real one.
But Adrienne said even if she isn't always seeing something that looks like real resistance or real joy on social media, she is seeing those things. Like she said, she's been excited seeing people joyfully show up at protests or joyfully participating in boycotts, people joyfully helping each other get access to healthcare. And she talked about music and laughter.
In pleasure activism, I have this interview with Dallas Goldtooth, who's an Indigenous organizer, and he talks about the importance of humor for Indigenous peoples who have survived all the attempts of genocide in this country. And we're living in a genocidal time. We're living in a time of mass apocalyptic conditions, of climate catastrophes. And so I'm like, oh, who knows how to survive a time like this? It's Indigenous peoples. It's peoples who have survived war and survived famine, and who have survived climate catastrophe. When you're in New Orleans, you're going to hear people marching down the street playing a second line, even if they're grieving. But the places that are able to survive stay enough in touch with culture and the joy of togetherness that there's something to hold on to, even as you're going through seemingly impossible grief, seemingly overwhelming despair.
It seems like the idea of togetherness and community came up a lot in your conversation.
It definitely did. Adrienne said that's really one of the keys to all of this for her. She told me that our society right now is structured in a way that joy and pleasure are often seen as things that people with power get to buy or demand from everyone else. But there is a deeper kind of pleasure that is shared and abundant.
As opposed to like a scarce resource that needs to be hoarded.
Mm-hmm. And Parker, she grounded a lot of her book in the writings of queer people of color because she said queerness can help us understand a version of pleasure that isn't derived from a fixed hierarchy of power.
Queerness in its original articulations really is about a rejection of the sort of heteronormative love as a function of ownership and, sort of the capitalist approach to relationship. Queerness is like, no, maybe it's just about pleasure. Maybe it's about relationships that are outside of those structures. And I wanted to bring that to more people because I'm like, you can be a straight woman or a straight person and still benefit from the politic of liberation and having authority over what you do and don't do with your body, what you do and don't do with your energy and your attention and your relationships.
Okay, I can appreciate that.
I thought so. And Parker, one other thing I wanted to share with you from that conversation was that Adrienne talked about this idea that joy is not an isolated thing, like it's a very important element in a larger emotional ecosystem.
I need to feel the full range of emotion. So when I'm feeling big despair, like I have been in this past period of living in the United States, I feel despair, I feel shame, I feel embarrassment. I also feel the internal resentment of being a Black woman who has been saying for my entire adult life, hey, we're heading towards the worst possible path. Can we redirect ourselves? And there's that weight as well that I know a ton of Black women are also feeling right now, who are just like, I'm going to go live my best life right now because I tried to tell y'all about this and you didn't listen. And so there's layers and layers and layers and layers. But I do find that if we don't fight for our connection to aliveness right now, it could be easy to slip into the despair, which I think makes us even easier to control because then we're like, this is inevitable. There's no hope. Nothing that we do will be big enough for the struggle that we're in. And I think if we give into that, it's easy to become sheep. It's easy to become complicit in the harms that are happening. And I do think it's really important right now that we say we don't comply, we don't agree, we don't consent. And in fact, we are dancing down a different path.
So, Leah,
Yes.
did Adrienne convince you that there is a place for joy in this world?
Yeah, I suppose I was able to begrudgingly see how, amidst shame, embarrassment, grief, resentment, exhaustion, maybe there was a place for joy to poke through as part of the resistance.
I'll take it.
But I wanted to understand what that has actually looked like over the course of our country's history. So I called up a historian.
I also talk in my book about like enslaved women and how they would sometimes go out into the middle of the forest, like sometimes miles away, and throw these dance parties. And they are doing this in order to carve out spaces for themselves.
So when we come back, we'll get into how previous generations of people have used joy as a tool of resistance and why Kelly Carter Jackson thinks of joy and happiness as very different experiences.
That's after the break. Stay with us. Parker.
Leah?
Code Switch. And Leah, you've been on a journey to understand how joy can function as a tool of resistance.
That's right. And I was eager to hear about how communities have used joy really effectively to fight oppression throughout history. So I called up Kelly Carter Jackson. She's the chair of the Africana Studies Department at Wellesley College and the author of a new book called We Refuse, A Forceful History of Black Resistance.
For me, this book is like a love letter to the Black community because I really wanted a book that addressed how we have resisted. Each chapter in my book looks at different ways that Black people, I think, have successfully and effectively combated white supremacy, from revolution to protection to force to flight to joy.
Like Adrienne, Kelly named a lot of different types of experiences when she talked about joy. So I asked her what it looks like for joy to be an act of refusal.
Context matters quite a bit. So how people engage in joy, who is engaging in joy, I think matters quite a bit. And when you have that context, when you're talking about a protest, for example, and you're seeing people at a march and they are, sort of chanting, no justice, no peace, or chanting, I can't breathe. And then, in that moment, someone brings out a boombox and next thing you know, they're doing the electric slide and, people who were just crying are now in uproarious laughter. Like that to me is joy in practice. You are taking something that is traumatic, that is painful, that is grievous, and you are insisting on justice. You are insisting on your basic humanity. And for me, to see that in action, I mean, it's a very joyous thing. It really is. It can be contagious. But not everybody gets the depth of joy unless you understand the suffering, unless you understand like the cost that is required to conjure up that joy.
Can you talk more about that cost? Like, what is the cost?
I mean, the cost is steep, especially when I think about racism, when I think about white supremacy, when I think about all the isms, capitalism, sexism, homophobia. When you think about how taxing those isms are, how oppressive those isms are, how they engage your everyday life, how you are constantly being interrupted and distracted and burdened by people's inferiority complex of you or by people's stigmas of you or their negative ideas about you or their deficit ideas about you. Trying to combat that is not easy. I think about it a lot just in terms of like culture. So when I think about the Black Panther Party, for example, I think one of the greatest things that they contributed in their movement, aside from like the free breakfast program and sort of like all of the social work that they were doing, was cultural pride, was being able to look in the mirror to see a wide nose and a full lip and kinky natural hair and say, that's beautiful, that's great, say it loud, I'm Black and I'm proud. Like there was a real movement to create language and an identity and a culture of Black self-love, because so much about white supremacy is about hating who you are, hating your look, wanting to be someone else, aspiring to whiteness. And so for me, when I think about the past, I think about the ways in which we have culturally, as Black people, created wells to draw upon that will feed us and nourish us to get us through those really tough times. And, some people might say, oh, that's just like swagger, or it's like, coolness, or like the berets or the clothing, the aesthetic, all of that it's superficial. But I think that does work. I think it does really meaningful work in how people see themselves. I also talk in my book about like enslaved women and how they would sometimes go out into the middle of the forest, like sometimes miles away, and throw these dance parties. And you might say to yourself, like, well, how could a slave go out and throw a party? And aren't they supposed to be miserable? And, if we say that enslaved people found happiness or joy, is that problematic? Are we saying that the system is okay? And it's like, no, the system is absolutely not okay. And they are doing this in order to carve out spaces for themselves to experience joy, to experience even happiness, even under the threat of being caught, of being whipped, of being sold away. There's danger in pursuing joy as well, because it is always under threat. It is always under attack. If you've ever been at a gathering of Black people, be it a sporting event or a picnic or a concert, you're always worried that something is going to squash that moment. And so you really have to be insistent on how you protect that moment.
One of the questions I've been thinking through is like, is joy a means to an end, or is joy kind of something valuable in and of itself? And I think one of the lines in your book, or one of the kind of metaphors you use in your book, is that joy is a remedy on the path to complete healing. I'm wondering if you can talk about that idea.
Yeah, joy is not justice. It is not justice. And I think that we have to be careful, because if we confuse joy with justice, then we will look at someone who is smiling or happy and say, see, they're okay. See, we don't have to do anything else. See, mission accomplished. And that is not how joy works. I look at joy as a splint. I look at it as a cast that's sort of holding that broken bone in place so that it can heal properly. But that healing really comes from justice. But joy is meant to help you get there on the way. Joy is there so that you don't quit, so that you don't give up before you've gotten to where you want to be.
If justice is achieved, does joy, go away?
No. That's a good question. No, because even though joy comes from, I think, sadness and sorrow and oppression, like it's used as a tool to navigate those things, when you do get healing, when you do get justice, then joy is just jubilation. Joy is liberation. And the thing about justice work is that too, it's ongoing. And I think that's the problem with what we've done in history is a lot of times we'll get a big piece of legislation and we'll pat ourselves on the back and we'll say, okay, that's it. We're done. 13th Amendment. We're done. Slavery's over. 14th Amendment. We're done. And there's always resistance, though. There's always going to be pushback. There are always going to be people that want to mess up the party. And so, you can't just look at justice as an ending point or as a finish line, but as a continuum of how we always have to maintain, sustain, and live life.
Do you think that people who are not, oppressed or marginalized, can they experience joy?
So I say in my book that it's not that white people per se can't have joy, but I think that oftentimes they are not faced with systemic oppression. They do not have to sort of face the day in and day out challenges of what it means to be Black or to be oppressed. And so because of that, joy for them will probably look a little bit different and will have a different context attached to it. And I've often found, and I even say this in my book too, that it's like white people get to be happy, but Black people get joy. And that can feel kind of like a rub because happiness doesn't have anything tethered to it. It just sort of is. You can just be free. You can just, be your own identity. There are no assumptions made about you. But joy has to come from a different place. Joy comes from a place that is much more gritty and difficult to navigate.
There is a pretty brief moment in the book, but you talk about enslaved women who were rebelling against being enslaved, smiling. But I want to hear you tell this story because that image is has stayed with me so much.
This is a story during the Haitian Revolution in which Black revolutionary fighters were fighting against the French, and some of their warriors had lost their battles, and as a result, the French executed them, and these were public executions. And they would often be done in front of everyone as a message of saying, this is what happens not only when you get out of line, but when you get caught. And these women that had been captured by the French, they refused to let the French take their lives. And so when they go to the gallows, some of the women are smiling. And they're not smiling because they're happy. They're smiling as a form of defiance. They're letting their oppressor know, no, you don't take my life. I'm robbing you. I'm robbing you of my labor. I'm robbing you of my being. I'm robbing you of your profits. And that I will happily go to the gallows, because it's liberty or death. And it was such a powerful moment in which these formerly enslaved women are saying to their daughters who are about to watch them be executed, don't cry for me. Your wombs will bear free children. I do this for you as a way to bring about your freedom. And it just, those stories gripped me. It just gripped me because honestly, I don't know if I would be courageous enough to smile on the brink of death, to smile in the face of my oppressor, to let him know, joke's on you, that to me was a powerful statement of using joy as a form of defiance.
Yeah. And hearing you tell it right now, I'm almost like, if that's joy. I would rather have happiness.
Ha!
You know,
Wouldn't
like-
we all? Wouldn't we all? I mean, that's the thing about kind of like, it's like, I think I even said this, I don't know if it's in the book or I've definitely said to other people, it's like, I just want to be happy. I just want to be happy. Like, I don't want to have to, put on my big girl pants. I don't want to have to be strong. I don't want to have to push through. I don't want to have to endure. But that is not the life that we live. That's not the lot that we've been afforded. I have to ask myself sometimes, like, am I living in 1830 or am I living in 1859? And by doing that, I think like, okay, if I'm living in 1830 and I know that someone tells me that freedom is coming 30 years from now, like, how would you sort of live your life? Would you just be like, well, I'll just wait, Or is it like, no, I'm trying to actively hasten this. So maybe I won't see it, but my children will see it. My grandchildren will see it. Are we in 1859? Is it liberation just around the corner? Is it just 1 year away? We don't know. And that's kind of the beauty and the pain of all of that, is that you have to keep working whether you live to see it or not. I mean, it's like Martin Luther King said, he's like, the mountaintop, like, I may not get there with you, but I can't stop doing this work because maybe it won't benefit me, but if it benefits you, then, again, mission accomplished.
So what do you say to people who are exhausted and burned out and feel like I don't have it in me to
I want to quit. Yeah. Oh, so when I give like my book talks, I spend like maybe, I don't know, like a good 3/4 of the lecture talking about like, resistance and force and protection and, flight and all these different things. And then I show people a picture that most people have not seen. There are several pictures, and it's of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on vacation in Jamaica. And he is like shirtless in the swimming pool, like propped up. Coretta's right there with him. It's a picture of him and Coretta like walking on the beach. There's another picture of him and Coretta like eating dinner on a veranda, and I love looking at these pictures, not just because MLK is shirtless, but because like he is experiencing joy. And he says, in Jamaica, I feel most like a human being. And I think it's because, we only see MLK in suits. We only see him doing the work. We only see him giving the speech. We only see him marching. And I'm like, but if he took a break, but if he needed to be replenished, if he was on the beach in Jamaica, and not forever, but like you go, you get replenished, you tap out, you hang up the cape for a little bit, and then you tap back in.
Kelly Carter Jackson is a historian and the author of We Refuse, A Forceful History of Black Resistance. She's also the co-host of the podcast This Day in Esoteric Political History. Kelly, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
So, Parker, what do you think? Did I ruin the concept of joy for you, or did I actually, dare I say, save it?
Let's not get too ahead of ourselves. Joy and pain are like sunshine.
Joy, pump it up. Pain, come on, here we go. Sunshine, what else? Rain.
And that's our show. Follow us on the NPR app or wherever you get your podcasts. This episode was produced by Jess Kung. It was edited by Courtney Stein and Dahlia Mortada. The rerun was produced by Christina Kalla. Our engineer was Robert Rodriguez. And a big shout out to the rest of the Code Switch Massive: Xavier Lopez, Verlin Williams, Barton Girdwood, Yolanda Sangweni, Maya Dangerfield, and Jean Denby. I'm B.A. Parker.
And I'm Leah Donnella.
Hydrate.
Seek joy.
Ooh, let that be your thing now. What if that's your brand now?
Oh, God. You'll know that I've been body snatched if I start telling people to seek joy.